Were you afraid of the boogeyman as a kid? The nightmarish entity that's life's goal is to scare the bejesus out of bad children? You may have not heard about this one. It might sound crazy, I know, but after my experience, I may never look at myself as a normal person. My family and friends never believed me, though, calling me confused, a liar, etc. Maybe. I was only 10 at the time. I live in a neighborhood that you might have seen in old 50s movies such as Grease, with my younger sister, Emily, and my dad. Our mom was sometimes at work until around 10 p.m. I was watching Sesame Street with Emily till we saw a bumper for a new show, Between the Lions. Between the Lions is basically a show similar to Sesame Street, but it was about how to read and spell. We once watched an episode about a book similar to such matters, but what I saw seemed bizarre. The characters who played the lions were acting normal, but everything around the lion family was indescribable. Humanoid lizards crawling on the walls, pale, bald people, spiders walking down the stairs and across the halls, men in dark hooded robes stood with the children as if they were their teachers. Emily asked me about the hooded men and creatures. I told her it was probably just a Halloween episode. However, after checking the calendar, I saw that it wasn't October. I thought that maybe this might have been just a rerun. Suddenly, as I was about to walk into the living room, I heard Emily call my name. Kyle? What do those words mean? I looked and I saw the couple's parents, Theo and Cleo, saying or spelling words such as fire, blood, murder, destruction, and evil. However, they simply explained what the actual words are. I was unnerved by this, so I went to change the channel, to Emily's dismay, but noticed something which caught my attention. The set was similar to our library that was right across my home. I thought the library was usually CGI and not real. However, it appeared as if this episode was actually filmed in my hometown library. That's not even the scary part, because I looked through the window, there were children playing in my neighbor's front yard. Soon I glanced back at my television and, in absolute shock, the children were there being filmed. Also, the children who were playing with both Lionel and Lena. It was as if they were filming this live. My eyes widened and Emily noticed that I was pale as a sheet. She asked me what was wrong and I already started to breathe heavily, feeling my chest go up and down. I told her to go to her room and watch SpongeBob. She nodded and went to her bedroom. What was going on? Why were there children at the library, and how is it that I'm not losing my mind over something a pair of little children couldn't really understand? Being only 10 years old and barely mature enough to understand these types of predicaments, I was both confused and terrified. But I had to keep it from becoming more of an issue, even if it brings to me my downfall. The next day off, after I got off the school bus, Emily tugged me and said that the lions were following her to school. My mind went into all directions. Who followed you? I asked, not letting her know I was freaked out. The lions from that show, silly, she chirped. Now I was starting to panic. My heart was beating like a galloping horse. I started sweating bullets and I was on the verge of a breakdown into panic screams. Because now she was telling me what sounded like something that a madman would say in an insane asylum. But thank heavens this was going on inside of me, because I didn't want to frighten her and let her know that this was a very disturbing situation. Emily and I went inside and she was already starting to watch Between the Lions. Soon I witnessed something that made my blood turn cold. It showed the 4 puppets inside my own house. I was also in frame. I looked at the TV back at where the cameraman would have been. I ran out of that fucking house screaming for my mom and dad just as they pulled into the driveway, tears in my eyes. I was literally going insane. However, I knew that I had to be strong for my family. But most of all, I had to be strong for Emily. But who's going to be strong for me? I had no other choice but to ward off the entity that was stalking Emily at school and scaring me to death. Later that night, I crept out of my house and ran to the library with nothing but a flashlight. I remember the people who owned the library locking the doors and windows. I might have regretted doing this, but I had no other option. I picked the lock and entered the front door. Good thing Skyrim had taught me how to pick locks. I searched through the entire library and found a mysterious book upstairs in the middle of the children's section. It was a book called The Necronomicon, a book on how to raise the dead. I knew this because I accidentally took a peek at my dad watching Evil Dead. I knew that if I took this book to my parents and showed them what our library was doing, they would believe me. So I grabbed the book and looked at it in my 10-year-old hands. Suddenly I heard the office door knob shaking. So I turned and called out, "Who's there?" Every fiber of my being froze in unimaginable fear. The door slowly creaked open, and I heard the most horrible sound I had ever heard. Then I saw them crawling on all fours. Pulsating, bloodshot eyes were looking straight up at me. One of them had bandages around its eyes, obviously blind. Their grotesque and sharp teeth gnarled, their pointy ears down, obviously angry at what I've done. But what the fuck did I do? All I did was grab this fictional book on how to raise the dead. I shined the flashlight on the creatures, but they vanished. I turned it off to see them there again. Flashed it on and off, realizing they're invisible when in the light. I went to run downstairs, but I saw two similar creatures blocking the entrance. My only escape. The monster on the other side had a hat and a t-shirt similar to Lionel in the show. I just figured it out. The truth behind Between the Lions. It was them. These things I was confronting. This was them, the lions in the show. In the show, the lions were little puppets, but in real life, there was a little game of Russian roulette with reality. They were brainwashing us, tricking us into becoming their victims before killing or eating us. Their meat, the meats that the puppets were eating, those were parts of children. I didn't want to think that. I did not want to think of something like that. I just couldn't. My childish mind was too feeble for such nonsense. I wanted out of that hellish library as fast as that I could, but I was stuck in one place, too scared to move. Then I felt the blind creature grab my shoulders from behind, biting into my shoulder. I let out a gut-wrenching cry as pain shot from my right shoulder down my arm. The thing that was supposed to be Lionel let out a demented clown-like cackle as I cried out in both pain and terror. I elbowed the monster off my back and punched it in the jaw. I ran downstairs, past the two monsters, slammed the door shut, and ran home. I was beginning to feel dizzy from the amount of blood loss, so I tried crying out for Mom and Dad. I thought I wasn't going to make it. Eventually, I collapsed in the middle of my front lawn and blacked out. I woke up in the hospital to hear Emily chirping, "Look, Mommy, he's waking up." "Emily?" I asked quietly. "Kyle, thank God," my mom said with tears in her eyes. "I'm glad you're okay. Thank you, doctor." My dad smiled, shaking hands with the medical professional. He was happy that I was going to make it out all right. "Where did you find this weird book?" my dad asked. I looked up and saw the Necronomicon in my dad's hands. I was in the library last night. With that said, I told them everything, but they wouldn't believe me. They said that the librarian told them that I was breaking into the library and stealing a book. Also, I was attacked by a guard dog that was just doing its job. However, I knew those creatures were no guard dogs. Some of those things I saw were standing on their hind legs and doing movements that I recall as marionette-like. And they didn't run towards me. Instead, they were flown towards me, as if hands were inside the backs that made their facial movements. This reminded me of that new It movie, like how horror movie reviewers describe Pennywise as puppet-like in Bill Skarsgård's performance. Because of my traumatizing experience, might as well have been in it. Those creatures I saw in the library on that night were just like the new and improved Pennywise, maybe worse. I didn't know what happened, or how nobody saw what I saw. I grew up paranoid and skeptical of that library, so I moved out of that town and ended up living in the suburban home in Newport News, Virginia. I still watch Between the Lions on YouTube, but after what happened during my childhood, it made me think twice about things. Let this story be a warning to all of you out there reading this. Be extra careful about what you watch on PBS Kids. They might be cute and harmless to you. However, dark secrets sometimes lurk behind their innocent disguises. Maybe that's the last thing you'll ever really truly think about. Okay, that was certainly something. Um, if I could potentially say one single phrase that pretty much sums up what my thoughts are in this story, it would be, what the actual fuck did I just read? Like, in all due complete and utter honesty, this story was just a massive jumble of something or another. I don't know if it's really just me, or maybe that's just how the story is, but I really don't know how to make heads or tails of this pasta. I mean, first and foremost, it goes into this whole thing with Between the Lions, and, you know, how apparently, supposedly, they were filming inside of their house, and then the kid goes to a library, grabs a Necronomicon, and all of a sudden he's being chased, and then he moves away, and it's just... What exactly was this pasta really trying to do? Well, what exactly was it trying to say? I mean, this whole pasta in of its own right was just really confusing. I mean, I guess I can kind of understand what was going on to some extent or another, but first and foremost, there's really no full-fledged explanation here. In fact, it seems as though that this story tends to go into, like, different acts as it continues on, as the story itself continues on, and that's a major problem with this pasta, because there's nothing that it really sticks with up until around the part where the kid goes into the freaking library. Also, the Necronomicon, are we really getting into that point? Are we really going to sit there and say that the Necronomicon, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know what that is, yes, it is the Book of the Dead. Yes, you can actually buy that online. It's really not anything too specific. It's just a stupid book. It's not meant to actually be taken seriously in any way, shape, or form, but regardless, I don't really know what to make of this pasta. I mean, is it a bad story? Is it good? I don't know. I mean, this story could have definitely had a lot more potential to it if it stuck with one specific thing. And for whatever reason, this is giving me Stubbs Clubhouse kind of vibes. Especially when it got to that part where where the protagonist was talking about how, supposedly they were showing footage and everything from, you know, kids playing out in a playground and then being filmed inside of the house. This story is definitely giving me Stubbs Clubhouse vibes, and it wouldn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form if there were part of this story that were inspired from that specific pasta. I'm not saying that was the case or not. I'm just saying there's just some things within this pasta that quite literally mirror that actual story itself, which I don't have a problem with people using inspirational parts or whatever may seem to be in other pastas, but did it really have to be that exceedingly blatantly obvious? I mean, it literally just feels like specifically the first part of this pasta, that it basically just took chunks of Stubbs Clubhouse and just kind of glued it in there, and Stubbs Clubhouse was a piece of shit. Again, there's really nothing much else more I can say about the story other than the fact I don't really know what to say. Like, I'm genuinely stumped. I don't know what to say. I can't review this story because what is there to actually review here? So, yeah, I mean, maybe somebody can explain this to me. Maybe there's something I'm not getting with this pasta, because I can't review it. I can't really say anything else. So, with that stated, I don't have a final thoughts, except this was a confusing mess, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't even have a final rating either. I can't rate this story. So this story is probably the first in this entire channel's existence where I consider a pasta completely unrateable. This story wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It was just exceedingly confusing. But with that being said, what did you guys think about this story? Is there something that I probably don't get? Did you guys figure something out with this pasta? Can the author of the story, Psychopasta, maybe explain a little bit more to me? maybe it's... I have a feeling this is probably just a me situation here, and I do apologize for that. But what did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not? Did you think it was an extremely, overly confusing mess? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I'm the Shadow Raider, thanks again for watching today's episode, and like always, roll the outro, cause I need to go get a cup of coffee.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping, horror-driven, nightmarish, gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.